Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having me. I realize I stand between you guys and lunch probably, so I'm going to keep this snappy and share a couple things that I've learned over the last year. As I was introduced, my name is Tamara Mendelsohn. I head up the consumer side of the business at Eventbrite. We're a global marketplace for live experiences, and our goal is to make real life more fulfilling, more interesting by connecting people with events in the real world. Now, our marketplace has two components. We have event organizers and producers, like the fine folks at Button here, and we have attendees, so consumers that go to events. Now, I spend my days thinking about the attendee experience and the solutions that we can build for attendees. I'm not sure exactly when it happened, but somehow like waving hands in the air became like the universal symbol for live experiences. But in reality, Eventbrite powers a lot more than just concerts and festivals. Yes, we do that like Gov Ball in New York, but also Tribeca Film Festival, race events like Tough Mudder, cooking classes, yoga workshops, business events, beer tastings, dance concerts, pop-up dinners, Comic-Cons. You kind of get the idea. And the reason I'm talking about this is it sets up the challenge for us. The diversity of events is very wide. And even greater is the diversity of interests that people have. So if you think about the types of things you're interested in, it's probably not just mobile. Maybe for a few of you diehards, but there are probably other things that you're interested in. And so our challenge becomes, how do you connect this great world of events with people's unique interests and tastes? In addition to that challenge, we also have a mobile challenge. I would imagine that's also why a lot of you are here today. Our mobile challenge, I'll just go into a little bit of the particulars. We have an app for consumers. It's an app that was built primarily for accessing your ticket to an event, for pulling up your ticket, for storing your tickets and all the information about the things that you've bought. It's a really highly functional utility. In fact, millions of people use it every month to pull up their tickets. At the same time, we have another challenge, and that's consumer sessions on Eventbrite, I think just this past summer, have surpassed desktop. So the mobile sessions on Eventbrite have surpassed desktop sessions. We have more consumers looking for things to do, engaging with Eventbrite on their mobile devices than on their computers. So how do we bring these two things together? How do we create solutions that can engage consumers in a meaningful way on the devices where they're spending the most time? So I was given this challenge. Let's disrupt our business from the inside out and figure out how to do things differently. And just as I was sort of scratching my head and trying to figure out how to do this, we invited David Kelly to come give a talk at Eventbrite. And for those of you who aren't familiar with David Kelly, he's the founder of a company called IDEO. IDEO is probably is a very well-known, famous design firm, probably most well-known for some of its early innovations and inventions like the Apple mouse, for example. And David Kelly is truly the father of design thinking and of human-centered design. And so he came and gave a talk at Eventbrite and really inspired me to think about our problem a little differently. The core of his message is that you shouldn't build products that your business needs. You should build products that your consumers need, that your customers need, that solve a real pain point. And this is a fairly simple concept, but in reality, it's actually very hard to do because often your first instinct is, well, what should we do for the business? But really, the first question should be, what can we do for our customers? And so we took a field trip to the design school. So David Kelly now teaches at the design school at Stanford, where he is literally indoctrinating hundreds of students into this design methodology to help change the way we think about building products. And we put together a 3-month syllabus, and I took a tiny team. I took 4 people out of the office. We hunkered down in a friend's office space and set out to build something that would disrupt our business. So I don't have a ton of time today, but I want to share 3 learnings that I took away from this experience. So the first one is there is no replacement for observation. When you build new products, customer empathy has to be at the foundation of everything you build. And the way to get customer empathy is through customer understanding, and the way to build customer understanding is through observation. I think one of the best ways to do that is through observation. And so what we did is we traveled around the country. We held focus groups in cities across the country. We brought people into conference rooms. We fed them snacks, and we had them talk. We had them talk and share stories about how they decide what events to go to, what events do they go to, how do they decide the things that they're interested in, who do they decide to go with, how do they coordinate their friends, what happens when they get to an event. And we just spoke with them for hours and hours and hours to try to understand what the themes were. We also watched them use mobile devices. We gave them apps to play with. We asked them to do certain tasks and actually observed how they interacted. We also went to a ton of events. Some of the perks of the job, there was a all dressed in white pop-up picnic. We went to races. That's me at the Houston Comic-Con with Spock. And we went to dance parties on boats. Literally hundreds of different types of events all over the country to talk to people about their experiences. And then one of the more interesting things that we did was a set of diary studies. And so it's really, really hard to observe people at the moment they decide to go to an event. Now, some of your businesses, it might actually be really easy to observe people. Like David Kelly was talking about, they were trying to solve a problem for a chain of gas stations. It was really easy just to sit for days and watch people drive up to the pump, fill their tanks of gas, and derive observations from that. For us, it was a little bit harder to observe all the moments we wanted to observe, so we asked people to keep diaries. And they wrote for days about their experiences and how those moments of inspiration when they decided to do something, or when a friend called them and said, hey, did you know this band is in town, or this speaker is here, or do you want to go to the rodeo this weekend? And so we compiled pages and pages and pages of diary studies. And the first thing we did with all of this data is, we spent probably about a week culling through it all and rehashing everything we had learned. And the first thing we did was decide, okay, who are we building for? Were there personas that we could identify through the research that made sense? And what we found was something that you probably have experienced in some way, shape, or form in your daily life, is that in every group of friends, there is the ringleader, and then there's everyone else. And the ringleader takes great pride in going out and finding things to do, in rallying their friends. And this experience of being the ringleader is core to their identity. And so for the rest of our project, we decided to focus on that person because we felt that their needs were more acute and that we could potentially build something that could be really interesting. The second observation or learning that I walked away with, start and end with user needs. Once you understand who your user is, getting very, very crystal clear on what their needs are is incredibly core to building product. So how do we do that? We literally took all the learnings that we came out with from the user observations, the consumer observations. We wrote them down on sticky notes. We tried to organize them into themes and basically came out with 3 very strong needs that we decided were going to be the core of what we were going to solve. Because if your product is solving a business need but not a customer need, it's going to be really, really hard to drive growth and adoption. So here are the 3 needs that we uncovered, just to give you like an idea and an illustration of the types of things we were dealing with. The first one is pretty obvious, and it's find things to do that fit my interests. My interests are diverse. There's not one source that speaks to me. I look at 5 or 6 different local blogs, publications, etc., to try to figure out what's happening around me. The second need that we uncovered was this need for proof that the event is not only worth my time and money if I'm buying a ticket, but really importantly, my reputation. So this is interesting. I had a horrible experience once where I dragged a group of my mid-30-year-old friends to what I thought was going to be an awesome improv comedy show. Turns out it was for 10-year-olds. That was humiliating. Our users want to avoid that experience at any cost, right? And so they do a ton of research. When they find something they think they like, they'll do a lot of research. And what we heard in our focus groups and saw in our diary studies is that people will go to YouTube and they'll look for clips of whatever it could be. Clips of a speaker speaking, a band playing, trying to see what a venue looks like, because it's all in the spirit of trying to understand, will I feel comfortable there? Will I fit in? Will this meet my expectations? Like setting those expectations is incredibly important because then they're also doing that with their friends. And interestingly enough, when I looked at the traffic coming into Eventbrite and then leaving Eventbrite, the #1 destination after a user's on Eventbrite is YouTube. This is just further validation of everything that we heard. We never understood this before. I don't even know if we looked at it. But understanding now people are finding events and then going to YouTube to try to validate and set expectations for what it might be like was hugely enlightening. And finally, the third one, there was an observation that we had around user needs. You guys might be familiar with the term FOMO. So FOMO is fear of missing out. This is like sort of the live experiences revolution term. This fear that everybody else is having a great time somewhere and you're missing out. What we uncovered is with ringleaders, there's like a certain breed or brand of FOMO, something more like FOMC or FOMB, which is like fear of missing something better. So what these ringleaders do is they collect options. So they have usually a calendar. Sometimes it's handwritten, sometimes it's digital. And as they find potential events that they could be attending on a given day, they write it down or they mark it. And then as that date approaches, they look at all their options and they pick the best thing. That was really interesting. And there's not a great way that they do it today. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of like remembering. And the worst feeling is realizing that you knew about something and then forgot about it and missed it. So, third and final observation and lesson. Test and learn without emotion. So this is incredibly important. The final phase of design thinking and human-centered design is a very fast, rapid prototyping and iteration process. And so what we did looked something like this. We worked in 7 business day cycles. So for a week and a half, we would design and build a prototype. We would do that in about 6 days. And then on the 7th day, we'd bring users in and test those prototypes. And we would build them in InVision or Flinto, things that you could build relatively quickly and lightweight, but gave the user a sense that they were using a real app. And then we interviewed people. We did interviews with folks across the country and brought them into our office as well, and then would take the learnings and go back to the drawing board. And something about that speed allows you to build without emotion, allows you to test without emotion. If you spend a year building a product and then put it in front of users and they don't like it, it's going to be really hard to let it go because you've put so much time, energy, blood, sweat, and tears into the process. But if you build something in 6 days, it's really easy to say, you know what, it just missed the mark. Let's go back to the drawing board. Not a lot of time wasted. And so over the course of, I think, 6 or 7 weeks, we tested 5 or 6 prototypes. And this is us sort of watching, because some of them we would do over Hangout, because we didn't just want to test with users in San Francisco because this was such a rapid process. We couldn't travel. But it turns out modern technology, things like Hangout, and the way we could deliver mobile experiences to our users allowed us to do that really rapid iteration. And then we'd go back to the drawing board. And the result was a new app, an app that's currently in beta. It's called Eventbrite Rally. And basically, once we got through the prototyping phase, we took 2 engineers and we built a product, a totally new product, and launched it in the App Store and continued the rapid iteration and testing with a live app. So now you can go to the App Store today and download Eventbrite Rally and play around with it. It's not perfect, right? And that's the point. It's changing really rapidly. Every 2 weeks we launch a new version, and we're constantly testing it to learn and understand, are we hitting the mark or missing the mark, and where? And what can we do to drive further iteration and engagement with our users? And so I'll end on this note. One thing I think that's become incredibly clear to me through this process is that consumer needs are getting more and more difficult to predict, especially when it comes to mobile. Because the mobile technology and devices are changing so quickly, it makes it very difficult to enter into really long product cycles, because by the time you launch something, chances are things have changed. So design thinking now is more important than ever because it allows us to really put users at the center of our process and iterate really rapidly. And the good news is that mobile platforms and mobile technologies allow for this really rapid innovation. Not only is it allowing for really fast and foundational fundamental changes in consumer behavior, it also allows us to keep up with that. And so using design thinking combined with mobile technology is really the key to figuring out how to disrupt your business. Thank you.